So I've wanted to make a video on this topic for quite a bit now because PS Plus, specifically Extra and Premium, I feel like they've been going downhill ever since last year, really. But especially these past few months, I feel like the games that they are adding are not that good compared to previous months, and then the games they are taking out are way more better than the games that they are adding. So I kind of wanted to talk about my opinion as to why this is happening, and also what I mean when I say that PS Plus is going downhill for at least me personally. So yeah, let's just get right into it, shall we? So if you haven't been around the channel for a while, you should know that I was a big fan of PS Plus. I got a PS5 last year, and I got PS Plus alongside it at least 1 month, and then eventually I got 2 years worth of PS Plus Premium, to be specific. And I was a big champion for the subscription service. Eventually I got an Xbox Series S and Game Pass, and I've been getting Game Pass every month. And I'm going to be honest, I preferred PS Plus Premium. I did. Especially because it was cheaper. At the time of when I got it, it was only $120 a year. And Game Pass was, what, $180 or something like that? I don't know. The price for, I feel like Xbox Game Pass changes way more consistently, I feel. So it might have been $180 to like $200 a year, but overall it was still, I preferred PS Plus. There were some downsides, like how it works with Xbox is that if you buy 1 month, it's not more expensive than buying 12 months, 1 year. For example, PS Plus, it was $120. On Xbox, for 1 month, it would be like $10, and then 10 times 12 is 120. Xbox, it would be like that, that's how it would work. But with PS Plus, the individual months will be more expensive than getting it for 1 year. I hope I make sense with my explanation. If not, look it up, I guess. I don't know. But basically, that was the only real downside to PS Plus, that if I couldn't buy, besides the first month that I got it, it couldn't be financially good to buy 1 month, instead of just buying 1 year. But I think the quality outnumbered that issue because there were PlayStation exclusives on the service. And I'm gonna be honest, I tried a couple of Xbox exclusives, and they did not do it for me, most of them. The only ones I really cared about were heckin' Forza, and that's only kind of, sort of, Gears of War, and really that's it. I did not really care about Halo, Starfield, Minecraft. I never really cared about it in general, and that's available on like Switch and everywhere else. But like I just didn't really care about most of the exclusives. While with PlayStation, I did care about those exclusives, and there's also third-party games, Now, obviously at this point, there were still some benefits to Xbox. I think PS Plus was overall better, but not to say Xbox Game Pass was like trash or anything, because the one consistent thing Xbox Game Pass had over PS Plus is day one games coming to the service, especially Microsoft games, which again, I don't really care about most Microsoft games, but having them day one is a neat bonus, and especially you do get more day one games from like third parties, and this was around the time that I got it. It was announced that Persona 3 Reload was coming to Game Pass, and that was a big plus, While with PS Plus, Extra and Premium, they do get some day one games, every so often, but it's not like really any Sony games, and it's only so often. But again, I just thought the quality outnumbered the downsides to PS Plus, but then things started to take a bit of a downhill turn when they increased the prices for PS Plus. Now, to be fair, they did also increase prices for Xbox Game Pass too around the same time, but it still was annoying that they increased it by $60, PS Plus Premium, to $180 a year, which is crazy. Now, nowadays, Xbox Game Pass is still more expensive, but it's really close to how it was before with Game Pass. And it's a bit annoying, especially because after they did this price increase, well, one, they did it for all the tiers, like, Essential, which was $60 a year. Now it's, what, like 80? I don't know. I don't really keep track. And then the Extra is more expensive too. Is it 150? I don't know. But, like, things got more more expensive in every tier. Not to say Xbox didn't as well. They even included new tiers, which are just confusing, like the Xbox Standard Edition. But we're not talking about Xbox, really. It's more so of a comparison to PS Plus. But that shouldn't excuse it for them increasing the prices that much, especially because with this price increase, you would think we would see some more good things coming to the service, like maybe more higher quality games, maybe more first party games coming at least more often, or more day one games. And no, nothing really changed, nothing at all. There were some benefits here and there added, like I think this was around the time they added the Sony, like some sort of streaming service thing, where you could watch some movies, but it's like not even like the most recent movies, like old movies from Sony. I don't remember what it's called, Pictures something, I don't know. I think that was around the time this was introduced, when the price increase went up, but really that's like the only thing that was of note. Besides that, which really doesn't count because it's not game related, it's also very old stuff. Nothing really changed to the service. In fact, this is where it started to get way worse, because after this point, now not to say that this didn't happen before, but this was a big turning point where I started to see more good games were starting to leave PS Plus overall. Before this price increase, I believe only one game left that was a Sony game, which is, it sucks that PS Plus, they remove Sony games, which Xbox really doesn't do, unless they're car games like the Forza games or whatever. But we'll talk more about why Sony's removing these games. It kind of has to do with a similar thing with Xbox, but also it kind of doesn't, I don't know. But it's still weird that they remove them when mostly Xbox doesn't. It's just weird. It's a first party thing. There's like no copyrighted stuff for the most part. Although, again, before this price increase, Spider-Man left, which you could see two reasons for why. But I think the most likely reason is because they wanted to sell the remaster for it when it came out on PS5. They wanted to sell it again, so they removed it from the service. Another reason why is maybe there is some licensing issues, because Spider-Man is like a Sony thing, but also Spider-Man is kind of like a weird thing where it's also kind of owned by Disney, like part of it is. And then Spider-Man appears in like different games from like other platforms like Xbox or Nintendo, so it's kind of weird, Spider-Man as a character in the game. But overall, it shouldn't have much of any issues, but I think maybe that's why it left PS Plus, either because of the copyrighted thing, the weird issues going on there, or most likely they wanted to sell a remaster. But overall, most Sony games never left the service, and to be honest, they still don't really leave, which I do want to talk about, but more have been leaving, and I don't like that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So probably some of the most major games that start to leave PS Plus were the Yakuza series, and then very soon after, the Final Fantasy games, and specifically Square Enix games in general. For like a while now, Square Enix and Sony have had like a pretty good relationship. Sony basically bought like exclusive rights for Final Fantasy for multiple years, and including back in like the PS2, PS3 days, I believe, but especially on the PS4, PS5, they have financed the Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy. They also helped out in Final Fantasy 16's development, I believe. So you saw a lot of Final Fantasy games on PS Plus, and a lot of Square Enix games in general. The Life is Strange games, the Kingdom Hearts games, Star Ocean, which came out last year too. And you start to see these games slowly go away from PS Plus, like most, if not all, of the game series in one go, which I think really started off with Final Fantasy. That was like the biggest hitter. Not that Yakuza, all those games leaving weren't bad, but it is kind of a more niche series, and Sega doesn't really have this close of a history with Sony in the first place, while Square Enix Final Fantasy does. That made me realize, okay, things are going downhill for PS Plus, because you saw all the Final Fantasy games leave like in one batch for the most part. There was some exceptions like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Crisis Core or whatever it's called. Like it's like a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. But like those two like stayed and that was it. But like everything else left. And then you start to see Star Ocean, all those games leave PS Plus. And now this month, which is what the thumbnail is, by the way, the thumbnail shows that they're getting rid of all the Kingdom Hearts games as well. And I think it's only a matter of time before they get rid of the Life is Strange games too, which I love Life is Strange, and if they remove them from PS Plus, like, that's gonna suck because that's how I played all the games, you know, up to this point, you know, besides the newest one, Double Exposure or whatever. But, like, to see all these Square Enix games sucks because Square Enix makes good games. They are really good games. And they had a good relationship with Sony, but now that's, like, ending or whatever. And I feel like this partly has to do because Square Enix wants to become more multi-platform. You know, they don't want to be limited to just the PS5 because they keep complaining about sales. You know, Final Fantasy 16 didn't sell as good. Final Fantasy 7 Reunion didn't sell as good, whatever. So they're disappointed. So I think maybe they're like cutting back on the Sony deal to some extent. You know, I still think the next Final Fantasy 7 remake, you know, like the third part of that trilogy of remakes, I think that will still be exclusive to PS5 for quite some time before we see them come over to like Xbox or even like Switch 2 or whatever. But it really does suck to see all these games leaving. Heck, that's not even to mention like other third-party games leaving. Like Sea of Stars, that left. Why did that game leave PS Plus? Especially because it's still on Xbox Game Pass. To this day, I'm sure it will leave the service eventually. But why did it leave PS Plus but not Game Pass? I would have thought it would have left around the same time for both. But nope. What the heck, Sony? But you also notice games leaving with hecking first-party Sony games leaving too, which is more puzzling compared to Spider-Man. You could argue away some things about Spider-Man, like being a little bit copyrighted like craziness with like Disney and stuff. But not this time, as they also removed, very recently they removed Horizon Zero Dawn, and then they removed Horizon Forbidden West. They removed 2 Sony first-party games that had no copyrighted material at all. And probably this has happened because of the remaster thing, but I still think it's a bit scummy to like get rid of them from the service. Like, I feel like if you leave them on the service, like, you get more potential sales because you don't have to give us like the remaster version, but you know how they are doing like the $10 upgrade? I feel like most people would get the $10 upgrade because they have it on PS Plus. Like, I feel like that's just more sales and money in the potential long run than trying to take out the game from the service and then hope people buy like a $50 game. Like, I think the smaller number, that's why, this is what I think, you know, in general for these types of pricing. I'm not a financial guy, you know, but I feel like getting more people to buy $10 of something is better than getting people to buy a $50 thing, because I mean, that's less money, but you know, that's more people you're open to. So I think overall you'll get more money in the long run, and I don't think it's good for Sony to remove it, you know. But it is their games, and at least that is a reason. But another thing that I saw was Little Big Planet 3 was also leaving PS Plus, which is another weird situation. It's not because it's getting a remaster, it's just because the game is getting delisted and the online is like getting shut down, so they're removing it from PS Plus and all that stuff. The DLC is getting removed too. So that's like kind of an exception. But overall, seeing more of these games get removed that are Sony-made games is really annoying to see. But I think there are some reasons, again, why this is happening. Again, getting delisted, or they want to sell remasters. Not that I agree with them, I don't. But I can not only see Sony's logic, but also I do think that people are a little exaggerating in certain ways. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, I do still think PS Plus is going downhill. That's why I'm making this video in the first place. But some people are like worried, for example, Last of Us Part 1 Remake, which was added to PS Plus, will be eventually taken away from PS Plus. Other games like Ghost of Tsushima will be taken away from PS Plus too. And I honestly don't think they will, to be honest. I think the only reason Sony removes them is because of licensing deals ending, like Square Enix, or because they want to sell something new of that same game. If it's from like a sequel, for example, like they had Spider-Man Miles Morales, still available on PS Plus while Spider-Man 2 came out. They have Ghost of Tsushima. It's not like they removed it after Ghost of Utia or whatever was announced. And I don't think Ghost of Utia, when that releases, I don't know if I said the name right, but when that releases, I don't think you're going to remove Ghost of Tsushima because that would drive up sales, to get people interested in the Ghost of series. Also, let's not even mention that, Ghost of Tsushima, and I didn't even mention this game earlier, but Death Stranding or whatever, some people think that will be removed from the service. Even though that's not a first-party Sony game, Sony has, like, marketing rights and they help fund it or whatever. And I think that game and Ghost of Tsushima as well will stick to the service when their like sequels come out in 2025, because they already have PS5 versions. They came out on PS4, but they have PS5 versions with greater frame rates and greater stuff added, so there's no need to do a remaster for them until the PS6, baby. Then they can remove them. No, but really, I think they're fine. You even see this with Square Enix too. Again, they kept Final Fantasy VII Remake, and this was around the time when Final Fantasy VII Rebirth came out, and they removed all the Final Fantasy games except that one and the Crisis Core, whatever the game is called, the prequel to Final Fantasy VII, which was added like around that same time, because like it's the synergy. They want to have promotion in the sub. I just think that it could work a bit better by keeping all those, well, at least the Sony games. I know eventually, contracts run up for these different companies, but for the Sony games especially, but even Square Enix, I feel like they could have just kept those games there, and have other incentives to try to entice people to pick up a new release, which, yeah, it's a bit annoying, but it's not really that bad, to be honest. What is kind of bad is just the fact that we still don't have a lot of the older Sony games on PS Plus. Like, we don't have God of War Ragnarok on there. Again, they removed the Horizon games, which is stupid. I mean, again, the remasters, but I feel like they should have them there, and then have the option to buy an upgrade, because it'll get more people to incentivize spending money, in my opinion. But you see that. And then also, Last of Us Part 2, where is it? It was on PS Now. I know they released a remaster of that, but like, where is it? Like, to be honest, it took so long for Last of Us Part 1, like the remake, to come out. I started playing the remastered version because I thought it wouldn't come out for a while. So, like, I just think there's a big problem with Sony and putting their games on the service. I wish there was a more, like, I'm not saying that they should have day one games available on the service. That would hurt sales, and you see Xbox struggling with this, in multiple ways. But I do think you should give, like, okay, at least a rough outline of when this will come to PS Plus. Like, after a year and a half or two, like, give us a round number of when we can expect it, because overall, it's kind of a guess of when these games will come out to PS Plus. I believe, like, Horizon Forbidden West, when that was on PS Plus, it came out like 6, maybe less than a year, a couple months after it released. God of War Ragnarok has been out for what, like 2 years and nothing. So come on, there needs to be some sort of time frame of when we could expect these games. I feel like Sony needs to communicate better, especially companies in general need to communicate better with these subscription services. I mean, I could complain a lot about how Nintendo does things with the Switch Online. They just randomly drop games. They did it with the Banjo-Tooie game a few days ago. But, like, I mean, which can be exciting, but at the same time, I feel like you should have some sort of, at least, roadmap to when we can expect certain things. Like, for Sony's sake, when we could expect first-party games, how long after they're released can we expect them on the service? PS Plus, but with Nintendo, when we could expect game announcements for Switch Online, if that makes sense. But again, a whole other separate topic I could do a different video on. But yeah, it's really sad to see PS Plus starting to go downhill. I don't think the service is like bad now. I think it still has a lot of good stuff, you know? The Life is Strange games, at least for now, they are Square Enix games, so who knows how long they'll last there. But you know, a lot of Sony first party stuff are still there, and I don't think they're gonna remove many games unless they plan for them to be remasters. Like, I could see maybe Days Gone being removed because that was rumored to get a remaster. But like overall, like I don't think they'll remove Ghost of Tsushima or The Last of Us Part 1 remake. I think they'll keep them there for sake of promotion and all that sort of stuff. But that's just me, you know, I could be completely wrong, and that would just be another nail in the coffin. It really is going downhill, the subscription service, which would suck because I think there are still good things about it. And nowadays, I think Xbox is obviously the better one for most people, and they're more equal, PS Plus and Game Pass. But if you want more casual new games constantly, Game Pass is for you. If you want to experience some Sony games, I think PS Plus is for you. But I really don't think you should have it for more than like a year or two and play it constantly. After you play all the Sony games, I feel like, I'm gonna be honest, PS Plus might kind of not matter that much, you know. And hopefully they do keep increasing the value, like adding more Sony games, you know, or adding more day one games from, you know, other publishers. But yeah, that's why I think PS Plus is going downhill. I'm honestly not even sure if I'll even renew my subscription for next year, you know, at when the year comes, which I believe my subscription ends on August or the end of July, around that time of next year. I don't know if I'll renew it for a year. Maybe I'll start getting the 1 month for the service, but again, that's just gonna cost more money over time compared to just buying 1 year. So I don't know what I'll do. I guess I can worry about it later. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about PS Plus. Do you think it's going downhill like I said, or do you think I'm completely wrong and I'm an X-bot? Or I really don't like, by the way, I don't like those names that, you know, people call fans of like a certain company. You know, they call PlayStation fans ponies, they call Xbox fans Xbots, and then they call Nintendo fans Nintendrones. Like, why are you doing that? Like, who cares? Why are you making fun of people that love a console? As long as, you know, they're not harassing anyone back. Like, I feel like you shouldn't care what other people think. If, oh, I prefer an Xbox, I prefer a Switch, I prefer a Wii U. No, but I prefer PlayStation, you know? Like, who cares? So, I don't know. Anyway, let me know if you agree with me or not. But otherwise, that's going to be it for me. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, play some Xenoblade, and I'll catch you all next time for more. Peace. Bye, everyone.